Welcome back to The World Today. After spending 30 years behind bars, former U.S. Navy analyst Jonathan Pollard has been released. The 61-year-old was jailed for life in 1987 for passing classified information to Israel. Analysts say his freedom ends one of the longest-running and most contentious issues between the U.S. and Israel. Repeated Israeli appeals over the years for the U.S. to show clemency towards Mr. Pollard were rejected. The VOA's Rebecca Ward joins us live on the program to tell us more about this matter. You're welcome to the program, Rebecca.
Thank you, Timmy.
Now, there has been so much controversy over Jonathan Pollard's long incarceration. Why has his release taken so long?
Well, the release took 30 years, basically because he was sentenced to life in prison. Now, the federal prison system allows for parole after 30 years. This is a typical parole in the sense that there was no White House involvement in his release. It took 30 years because that is the minimum amount of time that a life sentence will allow for parole.
Now, Mr. Pollard has asked to leave the United States for Israel. Will his request be granted?
It remains to be seen. The Justice Department would have to take up that release, allowing him to violate what would be considered his parole, the parole board's, what they allow prisoners to do once they're on parole, and that is to check in with the parole officer every so often to make sure that he is abiding with the terms of his parole. So it doesn't seem likely at this point that he will be granted an exception to move to Israel where he is now a citizen. He was granted Israeli citizenship, I think in 1995. But that doesn't mean that he will necessarily be able to leave the country.
Now, finally, before I let you go, what impact will his release have on U.S.-Israeli relations?
It kind of remains to be seen because the administration did not necessarily encourage the release or the parole, as you will, but they didn't discourage it either. So had they discouraged it, I think that may have made tensions a little worse. But since there was no interference from the administration on what would be a typical parole board hearing, and he was allowed to go before the parole and be granted parole after 30 years, I think it will ease tensions, but it's kind of a matter of course, the way that the prison system works here, that this parole board hearing came after 30 years and he was allowed to be released.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you.
Now it's time to find out what's happening here in Nigeria. In less than 24 hours to the Kogi State governorship election, the Nigerian police is assuring residents of the state that it is not toying with its task of ensuring that they are adequately secured. There is a heavy presence of police personnel in Lokoja, the state capital, with the deployment of 4,969 personnel of the police mobile force. While the police is securing the electorate, there are fears that some unscrupulous people with sinister motives are trying to make things difficult for them. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is also assuring residents of a hitch-free and credible poll.
Members of the Nigeria Police Force gearing up for the task ahead. They have a duty to ensure that the elections are free and fair, and the man whose responsibility it is to ensure that the polls are violence-free says that adequate preparations have been made.
There are certain areas where there's a greater risk of volatility than others. So in those areas, we categorize them like traffic lights, red, yellow, and green. In those areas where we believe that there's a likelihood of volatility, of course, we'll deploy a bit more personnel. And in other areas, there may not be as many as in the risk areas. Our equestrian unit is going to be deployed. Our K9 unit is going to be deployed alongside our sister services, the civil defense, etc. They are bringing theirs. We are deploying helicopters for purposes of aerial surveillance of these elections.
There are indeed reasons to be sure that violence do not mar the polls. Some of the monitors here say that they have it on good authority that small arms are being ferried about in some parts of the state, but that they've been assured by security operatives that this will be taken care of.
Our long-term observers reported about movement of some light arms, which we promptly informed the security. We also addressed press conference on that. We issued statement. Then the security authority has also said that they'll be doing something in that regard. And as at yesterday, they confirmed to us that their men are fully on ground and that we shouldn't entertain any fear. So we take them by their words.
With assurances of security in the bag, next is that of logistics and the general conduct of the polls. In comes INEC, which assures that there will be a smooth poll.
We have already received the sensitive materials and have sent same to all the 21 local government areas of Kogi State. In the same vein, our smart card readers have since been configured and fully charged to ensure that they perform better, this time around.
We've been given assurances by the Commission that the permanent voters' cards would be used for this election, that the card reader machines are working and ready to go, and that people who do not have the PVCs and whose cards are not readable by the card reader machine would not be in a position to vote. I would think that it's an important process that you do have this piece of technology in place to eliminate as much as possible the human element that brings about manipulation of votes, and we do hope that INEC is ready to carry out this exercise. It is particularly important for INEC, it is particularly important for Nigeria to gauge how far we have come since the general elections. We did have shortcomings with the general elections, which we all accept was really a huge improvement on the electoral process. Our hope is that INEC, it doesn't just match with the gains of the general elections, but actually surpasses that, because this is a standalone election like you've mentioned.
The Election Situation Room, however, believes that some valuable lessons can be gleaned from the 2015 general elections. The projection by optimistic Nigerians is that all of these assurances will come to pass, while fears raised will be consigned to the bin as the people of Kogi State vote for their next governor.
And that's how we wrap it up on The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Temitope Fagbemi.